Oh, I'll be over here dancing, guys. The intro of this whole show just makes me dance all the time. So, I need to get my groove on a little bit. Anyways, let's get right down to the conversation of today. Today we have a very special guest. August is gonna be the month to highlight every first of every month is going to be the month where we highlight people's personal stories. And I just want to catch you guys up on that so you can understand the dynamics of things. And so today, you know, um, we have a very special guest who is very willing to share her story. She's an open book, she tells me. She is willing to share everything that she's gone through with you guys. Guys, I have the privilege. I am so privileged to be able to share her story with you guys. So, guys, with no further delays, I am going to bring on Cassandra Edwards.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You're smiling. I love it. I love it. I just love it. You're just so happy today. Tell us, how has your day been today?
It has been actually a pretty laid back day. I
Yeah,
didn't have too much to do. Ran to the post office, ran to the store, and I've been at home.
yeah.
Pretty laid
That,
back.
yeah, that sounds like a chill Saturday to me. Yeah, wow. Anyways, let's get right down to the conversation of today. I'm excited. And again, thank you so much for, you know, um, accepting my invitation to come on air to share your story. And like I said during my introduction, every first of every month is going to be an opportunity for people to come on to share their personal stories. And before we get down to any questions or anything like that, I want you to quickly give us a little bit of background about your book and how you came up with the name Unsolicited Tears. Go ahead.
My book, Unsolicited Tears, I came up with the name just because there were so many different instances in my life where I found myself crying unsolicited tears. They were tears that it was something that I desired to cry about or I wanted to cry about, but they were tears that I just found falling, from my eyes. And even as in the later years and things like that, they went from tears of pain to tears of joy, but they were still at sometimes unsolicited. So that's how I came up with that actual title. I've been writing poetry since I was about 11 years old, and I always had a desire to write a poetry book. And it was just a couple of years ago, as I was planning to write a poetry book, that God dropped it in my spirit to transition it from a poetry book to a vignette. And so that's what my book became. So I have short stories from different aspects of my life, and then there are poems as well in the book. So it's a collection of stories and poems that highlight the different experiences that I've experienced in my life.
That's pretty awesome. I wanted to get right down to this conversation because I know how interesting it is. However, I forgot to say what the title of the conversation is going to be. Now, guys, you guys saw in my flyer, the title of our conversation is This Round is for Me. I know you might be asking yourself, what do you mean by this round is for me? It means pretty much this time around is for me, and the me in this context is Cassandra. So, I mean, with no further delay, we're gonna go right down to all the questions. Okay. So, funny that you talked about how God dropped the idea of you writing a book and your story in your heart. you know the funny thing is, I've noticed that a lot of people, when they hear God's voice, sometimes they do not follow it. Sometimes they want to do what it is that they want to do. But I'm so glad that you decided that instead of doing what it is that you wanted to do, you decided that you were going to do what God wanted you to do. Okay. That's the most important thing. That's key. And I commend you. It's really tough sometimes because you're like, I don't even know where I'm going to start. But I always say, like, if God has put something in your heart, He's going to create the opportunity for you to accomplish it.
Yeah, because at first I was dead set on just writing a poetry book because I've been writing poetry all my life. And so when he was like, I want you to do stories, and I've always thought like my life is not that interesting. Like I don't need to write an autobiography or anything like that of my
Right.
life. It's not that interesting. But I was kind of skeptical at first because I didn't know exactly which stories I would tell and how much of each story I would tell. But I just decided to just, start writing, and I just let it flow. So some of the stories are extensive and then some of them are really short and straight to the point. And so it worked out.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, what is one experience that shaped you into the person that you are today?
There are so many different experiences that have shaped me into the person that I am today. I think one of the greatest experiences that shaped me into the person I am today was I lost my mother at a very young age. Well,
Are you?
I was 20 years old, so that may not seem young to some people, but it was a very critical point in my life that I lost my mom, and after that things just began to spiral. Things that I had dealt with before then, but after my mom passed, that was just like the spiraling point where things just started happening. And I just found myself in a lot of different situations, that a lot of times I cried and was like, if my mom was still alive, I wouldn't be in this situation, or if my mom was here. And so it was almost like throwing a pity party. And I was stuck in that place for a very long time.
So, can you tell us a little bit about, and that's as you want, because I know this is still, something that you think about it. But I want you, can you give us a little bit of, can you go in depth a little bit about what started happening when your mom passed?
I mean, just first of all, right after my mom passed away, about 2 weeks later, I tried to commit suicide. I felt like I could not live without my mom. And so I did try to commit suicide about 2 weeks after that. I was in a relationship, and found myself stuck in that relationship for a couple of years and just transitioned to other relationships after that. It took the birth of my daughter about I had my daughter about 6 years after my mom passed away. It took the birth of my daughter to shift some things and to make me refocus, but it was just like I was on just a path of destruction. Like I did what I wanted to do, in every aspect, and I just didn't have a care in the world, really.
Wow. So when your daughter came, when you gave birth to your daughter, what did you feel inside you? Why did you decide to step up from that whole spiral downtown that you were experiencing?
I think that the main reason why I stopped a lot of the things that I did when I found out I was even pregnant is because I didn't want my daughter growing up, doing like a lot of the things that I saw toddlers doing. Like, for example, I used to be a very avid cusser. Like, I used to curse like a sailor. My mom cursed like a sailor. But as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was like, I can't curse because I thought that one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed is just hearing people tell their kids, well, say this or say that, and how they were entertained at like young kids cursing and things like that. And I was like, I can't, bring her into this world and I'm cursing and using this type of language, and she picks that up and she thinks that it's cute or she thinks that it's appropriate. And so that was like one of the quickest things that happened. Like as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I just immediately was like, oh, I can't curse anymore. I can't do this. I can't do that because I didn't want her growing up thinking, this is the type of language like that you're supposed to use. Like I didn't want her repeating what she may have heard me say, in the house or around other people and things like that. So, and then just was like, I had to get back focused because, like I said, I tried to commit suicide and I was like, okay, now I have to live for her.
Yeah.
So it's not even about me. And I was still in a very dark place where I was still grieving, because I grieved for a long time. When my mother's death anniversary would come up or when her birthday would come up, I would be in a very dark place. Like I wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't deal with anybody. I would just sometimes even sit in my house just like with the lights out. And so once I gave birth to my daughter, it was like, okay, like I have to, I have to live for her
Right. Wow. Wow. So so there's one question that, was very, very important, or that is very, very important to me, because again, this platform is about, working on your journey, right? The journey never stops. The journey is always changing, right?
now.
So you keep working on your journey. So one thing I want to ask you is, I'm sure as all these things were going on, you encountered people in your life that you could pretty much say were mentors, so to speak, right? So
Yes.
what is the best lesson that you learned from a mentor and other people that came into your life at this time where you found yourself?
One of the greatest mentors that I probably found was after I had my daughter. This was years after my mom had passed, and my current apostle, her name's Tawana Spencer, but she's my apostle. And I met her when my daughter was about 3 years old. And so she took a lot of time to shift my perspective on a lot of things. I mean, I know it was like many a night she was up like in prayer, on my behalf. But even to the like I was in such a place that even to the point like when I heard the song that was played at my mother's funeral, no matter where I was at, I would storm out the building. I could be at a church service, I could be at work. If I heard that song, it triggered. And I would just leave
Mhm.
out the building. And it was many a times like when we were at church, and after this time I had started, following her and going to a church and things like that. And there were many a times like people would get up and they would just start singing that song, and I would walk out. And she let me walk out a couple of times, but there was one particular time when I walked out and she came behind me and was like, "You're gonna have to come in and face this. Like you can't, keep walking out every time you hear this song. Like you have to get delivered from this song." And things like that. And she walked me through that deliverance, and just being free and being, at peace with my mom being gone and things like that. So just one of the greatest lessons I could say then is just learning to face the pain so that I can move forward from
So pretty much facing your fears and moving forward.
it. Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. And when you say apostle, explain to me what that is.
So my apostle, it's a title in the church, of course, and she is a spiritual leader, and she's also has different leaders in churches like pastors and others who look up to her for guidance, and she guides them. She covers their ministries and things like that. So she is the leader over everything.
Mm. Wow. Okay. Now that okay, because I was like, when you said apostle, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to I want to be sure that I get it right. I don't want to be sure I don't want to get it wrong. So I wanted you to explain what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna open the floor up for one of the comments that I got from one of my friends on Instagram, or one of our viewers
Mhm.
on Instagram. And the question is, what is the biggest lesson you never learned? What are you still working on? And how are you doing your best to overcome it?
Uh-huh. If you were to ask me like the biggest lesson that I never learned, I would say the biggest lesson that I've never learned that would have been, because I think that at this point I've learned it now,
Yeah.
but I hadn't learned it at that point. But I think the biggest lesson that I've never learned is to not worry about what other people thought and to do it anyway. And I know not just myself, but a lot of people find themselves stuck in that place where they don't do certain things or they stay in certain situations because they're worried about what other people think. Like I stayed in a marriage for 10 years that I should have walked away from probably right after we got married, but I stayed in it because of what other people were thinking or what other people were saying, and I was trying to prove them wrong that it was different than what they thought and things like that. So I think that that was the greatest lesson that I had never learned, and I had to learn it through going through the actual experience. Nobody taught me, nobody prepped me for it, nobody warned me of it. But and again, that was something that I felt like I was cheated out of because I lost my mother at such a young age. So it was
Mm.
before I had entered into these serious relationships and things like that. And so I had to basically learn it. And I'm still learning that, even though I think I've gotten to the point where it doesn't really matter what people think, but there are times when I still find myself in a place where I have to tell myself, well, I'm going to do it anyway. You know, even with like the publishing of my book, I did it anyway. Even though some people are like, yeah, I can't wait for you to publish. I can't wait for you to publish it. And then some people are like, it's been so long. Like you've been saying you're going to publish it for years, but I did it anyway.
That's awesome. So why did you want to walk away from your marriage? What was happening in the marriage?
Um, Really, we were just really unequally yoked from the beginning.
Explain that.
We were completely like different people walking two different walks of life, and so as our marriage continued on, that separation just grew. We just grew further and further apart. We were really good friends. He's one of my very good friends, but it should have stayed on, a friendship level.
Right.
It was never something that should have transitioned into a marriage. But I was at a point in my life where, um, according to my calculations, it was time for me to get married, and we decided to get married. And so once I got married, and people were like, well, that's not going to work, things like that. So I stayed in it a lot because people said it wasn't going to work. So I was going to show them that it was going to work. It's like that. And I didn't walk away from it until it became an abusive situation.
Right. Thank you so much, Martini. Okay, Brad. Thank you so much for listening from Orlando, Florida. I appreciate that. Um, so when you say according to your calculation, you had an age in mind to get married, correct?
Yes. In
Okay.
my calculations, I was supposed to be married at 23, and I
Okay.
was supposed to have my first child at 25. That was always like what I told myself. At 23, I'm going to get married, and at 25, I'm going to have my first child. Well, I had my first child when I was 23. And so once I had her at 23, I was like, oh, well, my calculations must have been backwards. So it must be that I was going to have my first child at 23, and I need to be married by the time I turn 25.
Right.
So I got married like right after, right as I was getting ready to turn 25.
Okay. So right now, how do you feel that you are making a difference in the world, whether small or large?
Well, I'm a school teacher, and so I use that platform a lot of times just to influence my students and to make a difference in that arena. But even outside of that, I know with my book, as people read my book, they're going to be healed and delivered and set free from different situations that are in their life. So I'm making a difference in the education arena, affecting the youth as before they hit that age, and then even some who have already experienced it. Like I use my book, I talk about my book, I talk about my life, even with my students, because at the age that they're at now, because I teach in a high school, so at the age that they're at now, I was experiencing already a lot of the things that I talked about in my book. And
Yeah.
so I know what they're going through. And so a lot of times I can relate to it and I can recognize the signs of it because I went through it myself, but the difference was I went through it in silence. I didn't tell anybody, I didn't talk to anybody, I didn't reach out to anybody. And so when I see students going through those things or displaying those same behaviors, I bring them up under my wing. I reach out to them. I talk to them. I cover them. I show them a little bit more compassion, and things like that. and I share my story with them. And as I share my story with them, the kids begin to open up. And sometimes they'll come to me before class and after class and be like, well, I went through this too, or I'm going through this too.
Yeah.
And so that's the greatest impact that I can make, is to hopefully intervene on one of those kids' lives before they get to the point where they want to take their own life, like I attempted to do at the age of 20.
It's so good that you're doing that because, like you said, where you found yourself and where they are right now. And it's good that you say that, because kids, the thing about kids is when they know that you have gone through a certain situation that they are currently going through, they are more likely to bond with you and tell you things and open up more and share more with you than someone that never went through that. So it's important that you actually even bring your own experience to the table. So it's not as though you're just telling them, oh yeah, don't do this or don't do that. You're like, well, this is what I found myself doing at this age, but I don't want the same for you. And here is why I'm here helping you and giving you all this advice that you need, so that you don't have to suffer in silence, pretty much.
Right. And a lot of them are at a point where they feel like it's too far gone. They can't come out of it. And so I tell them, I stand in front of you in this classroom, but I went through this. I went through homelessness. I was molested as a kid. I participated in gang activity. I was in an abusive relationship, marriage, and things like that. And so I tell them, I stand in front of you, but I'm nowhere near perfect. I've been through those situations. And if I made it out of them, you can make it out of them. And you can be standing in front of someone or working in someone's office or whatever it is your dream is. You can't let what you're going through stop you. And so I tell them all the time, like, I have that on my shirt. You have to let your pain put you into your purpose. And so sometimes a lot of us, we go through a lot of different painful situations, and they're completely different. My pain may be a little deeper than yours, but whatever your pain is, you let that push you into what your purpose is. You don't let it stop you.
Mm-mm-mm. Pain pushed me into my purpose.
That's
I'm,
what it
I'm, I'm,
is.
I'm stealing that quote. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, like, a lot of businesses too, that's where they come from. They come from pain. When you've gone through something, or when you've gone through a painful experience, right? You want to help the next person that is going through that, so that they don't have to experience it as you experience it. They are in a better situation. So you're not only trying to grow as an individual, but you're trying to get the whole community to grow with you. So it's more of like a communal legacy and not an individual legacy kind of situation. And that's pretty awesome, because again, we don't exist by ourselves. The world contains each and every one of us. And so if we've gone through something, we should be able to advise other people, especially the younger generation coming behind us, right? Because sometimes the society tells them things that are okay, that are not okay.
Yeah.
But if somebody has gone through it and somebody has experienced it by themselves, it's better for them to be like, this is not the right thing to do. Forget what the society is telling you. I went through the same situation. This is how I handle it. Don't let the society push you into what it is that they want you to do. You have to be able to go through your pain. You have to be able to understand your pain. You have to be able to get help if you need to. And then when you get help and come out of it, or or in your own case, if you come if you suffer in silence, but you're able to still step up from that, the thing is, you want to be able to advise other people, like, don't stay there. And that's what this platform is about. I'm not saying that people are not going to go through their tribulations and trials. Life has a lot of obstacles, a lot of bumpy roads, But the platform is not for you to remain in that bumpy road. It's for you to get up from the bumpy road and progress through, and push through, because the journey has a lot of bumpy roads, a
Yeah.
lot. But at the end of the day, is how you're able to push through and make it out of it, right? And that is what you want, Cassandra. And you're helping other people now, especially younger people, to be able to step up from the situation that they currently find themselves. That is awesome. That is awesome. Um, I have a question for you, another question for you. So, what were your aha moments? And when did you have like this aha moment to make a change, to step up and make a change in your community?
Um, I've always known as a kid that I wanted to be a teacher and that I wanted to affect lives because it was really my teachers who pushed me into education, who pushed me, even when I was younger. And so I had some awesome teachers who did that. And so I knew that I wanted to do that for another group of people and just be able to be a voice because, like you said, a lot of us do suffer in silence. And I think it's a thing that, sometimes as a culture, we look at it as we have to go through it in silence because um, it makes us look weak. Sometimes if we don't, or we have to appear to be strong at all times. And so we suffer and we go through things in silence. And so even in my marriage, like I said, I walked away from my marriage after 10 years. But it was because what caused me to step up and walk away from that, it wasn't that, I no longer, loved my husband. Because when I walked away from my marriage, I was still very much in love with him, but I walked away because of my daughter. And like I said, it was an abusive situation as far as emotional abuse. Um, and a lot of that was behind the scenes. It was,
Mm.
and nobody ever saw it. We would go out, it would look like, oh, we were so happy and we were so lovey-dovey. And so there was a lot of emotional abuse. But when it became physical, and it had gotten physical before, but the thing was my daughter didn't see it. And so it came to a point one day when it got physical. I mean, to the point where he jumped through like my car window and could have killed us. And my daughter was in the car with me.
Oh.
And when I saw the fear in my daughter's eyes, and a man who she loved and worshiped, like he was her father figure. But when I saw that fear in her eyes, that caused me to walk away. Like I said, I was still very much in love, but I couldn't walk, I couldn't go back. Like I walked away and I didn't go back, even though there were many days that I wanted to. I didn't go back strictly because of my daughter, and I had to again be a lesson unto her because I didn't want her to think like, oh, if you grow older and you get into a relationship and he hits you or does something to you, you just walk away for a little minute, but
And
then it's
come back.
okay to go back. And so I didn't want to put that in her head. And so I had to go through like the motions of detaching myself and to the point. And when we got the divorce and everything, we still remained very good friends. We were really good friends before we got married. So, like I said, even after we got a divorce, we remained friends. Like I didn't hate him or anything like that, but I couldn't stay in that situation any longer. And it was strictly my daughter was my strength to do that. And there were nights when she would be sleeping, I would be laying up crying. Like, I remember times I prayed, like, God, if you just change him, but then I would be like, but I can't take him back because she saw him do this. And like I said, it had happened before where we had gotten physical, but it was in our room. She wasn't at home. And so she didn't see it. But once she saw it with her eyes, I couldn't go back into it.
Wow. So you just kept reminding yourself of that every time you thought about going back,
Every
right?
time I thought about going back, I had to remind myself I can't do it because of her. And by that time my daughter was like 10, 11 years old.
They know
And
stuff.
so she saw it, so I knew it affected her. And I asked her, I said, well, do you want me to, go back with him? Do you want me to let him come home, and be with us? And she was like, no, mommy, not if you don't want to. I don't think so, because I don't know why he did that. And so I didn't go back. Now, if she would have said, yeah, mommy, like, I think I probably would have been like, okay, well, let's come on back,
Right.
But no, she was like, no, I don't think you should, because I don't understand why he did that. And I was like, okay. And so I just had to keep reminding myself of that.
So that means your daughter was a blessing in that moment.
Oh, definitely.
Because
Definitely.
if you didn't have her, you would have probably gone back.
If I didn't have my daughter, not just in that moment, but if she hadn't seen that, I may not be a domestic violence, survivor or
Right.
conqueror. I say I'm a domestic violence conqueror, not a survivor. I may have been one of those victims who my family had to bury me, because it would have eventually probably gotten to that point, because it was getting bad,
Right.
at that point. And so I don't know if I would even be able to be sitting on the show talking about going through that if my daughter had not been there and if she had not witnessed it at that time. So even though I didn't, it wasn't my ideal situation for her to witness that, I'm glad that she was with me at that particular moment.
That's awesome, Cassandra. So wow. So where can our listeners and our audience get your book? Like, where can they buy your book?
My book is available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. You can buy it in paperback. The paperback is $15. The Kindle and the Nook versions are $9.99. So a lot of people reach out to me via Facebook, and they just order it because they want it to be autographed. So I'll autograph it and sign it, send them a copy. So sometimes they'll just reach out to Facebook and they'll cash at me the money, and I'll send it through the U.S. mail. But if they want to order it off a line, it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and it's also available on Books A Million. And I have like, this is my
Yeah,
book
I was
here.
gonna tell you, show us the copy, bring it close.
And so this is, I don't know how I can bring it closer. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I can see it. Yeah, yeah.
And so this is the book. This is the book cover. I love my cover. I love the tears on one side and then they're not on the other side, because it just shows the different pain that I went through and then how it transitioned over to the light. And so, yeah, so that's my book, and it's the first book that I wrote. It's there's more to come. I can't say when I'm going to do the other part, but there's more to come.
Wow. So the tears, you said there was tears in one eye and the other part was dry. What does that mean? Does that mean I went through pain, but now I've conquered, or what does that mean?
It signifies a transition from the darkness to the light. So from the dark moments to now, I'm heading towards the light, and the days are brighter. You hear always people say brighter days are ahead, but in order to get to those brighter days, you have to go through some darkness. We
Amen.
want to just see the bright days, but I had to go through some very dark moments. I had to get to a place where I could release this book. There were some things in here that I didn't want to really write. And there were some chapters in there that as I wrote them, I was crying tears as I wrote them. I was free from the pain, but it was just like, wow, I can't believe I survived this. Like, I can't believe I made it out of this. I was molested for years. My mother passed away and I never told her. And so that was something that I really had to deal with, because my mom, like, I was really stuck. And I didn't realize that until I wrote my book, that how I was still stuck at that little 13-year-old girl who just needed my mom to tell me it wasn't my fault. But because I never gave her that opportunity, because I never told her what was happening to me. And so it was something that I was in tears that night as I was writing that chapter, and God started revealing that stuff to me. And I was just like in tears, and I like called my apostle like the next morning, and I was like, this is what God showed me, and I was like, that's why, like people were coming to our church and they will prophesy, to me and say, well, you're so hurt, or, things like this. And I felt like I wasn't hurt because the people who had molested me, they had passed on. I had forgiven them, so I thought I was free. But I was still stuck at that 13-year-old girl who just needed my mom to tell me it's not your fault.
Right. So this was even going on when your mom was still alive before she passed.
Yes, my mother was alive while I was being molested.
So but you didn't tell her about it.
I didn't tell her no.
So why did you not tell her about it? Because you thought she was going to blame you, or why?
Well, as a kid, I think I didn't tell her just because I was I thought that I would be like blamed, like it was gonna be like, oh, well, you did something.
Mm.
But even though I was never given that impression, it wasn't until I wrote the book and God started revealing to me that the reason why I didn't tell my mom is because it was my own way of protecting her. Because
Mm.
my mom had an anger issue, my uncle had an anger issue, and I knew if I told my mom, she was going to tell her brother, and they were going to kill them because there was more than one person who was molesting me. And so they were going to kill them. And so I felt like if I would have told her, they would have killed them. And then I would have lost my mom because she would have been in jail. But as a kid, I just was like, oh, I'm just not going to tell anybody. Like, they're going to blame me for it. But as an adult, when God started to reveal that to me, it made so much more sense because I wasn't afraid. I was like I've always been like very vocal. I say whatever I want to say. I'll say anything that's on my mind. So it wasn't that I was afraid to tell. I just didn't tell because I thought that because I was shaped like really nice, and I was like, oh, they're gonna say, well, you must have had on some short shorts, or you must have. It like the blame would have been placed on me, and so I just didn't say anything. And then when I did say something, um, like they had both been passed on, and my mom was passed on. I didn't say anything, like even to like people in my family to let them know that someone in our family had molested me till I'll say about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. And then they told me like, no, that didn't happen.
Mm.
And I think that I was afraid of that even as a kid. Like they were gonna be like, they're not gonna believe me. Like so.
Wow. Awesome. I mean, one thing that really stood out to me is that you said pain pushed me to my purpose. I think that is the most important thing. And facing your fears, like some people want to run away from their fears, but you can't really heal if you don't face your fears. You know,
Absolutely.
you can't really heal if you don't, go through the motions. It's okay to go through the motions. It's just not okay to stay there and not come out from there. But it's okay to feel.
Mm-hmm.
On my platform, I think it was either this week. I think it was this week. I had shared, when I had my personal meditation with God, and one of the things that I wrote down in my spiritual journal, and I call it spiritual because it has like Bible verses on there, and it keeps me
Mm-hmm.
pumped. One of the things I wrote down there was, thank you, God, for showing me that it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel the things that you're going through, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't have to bottle up your feelings because you want to appear a certain kind of way, or you want people to, I don't know. You can go through your journey and feel. The thing is, when you feel the certain kind of way that you feel, and you go through the whole struggle of trying to, get over it, don't just stay there. Come out and, should I say, you know, transition from that stage, and that is what the platform is all about. Stepping up in your journey, leveling up in your journey. The journey sometimes is not pretty, sometimes it's rugged, and it's so rugged, but not staying there pretty much. So I mean, Cassandra, why don't you just leave us with like some final thoughts? Like, you shared some deep deep things about yourself, and I appreciate you for opening up. Why don't you just leave us with some final thoughts?
One of the things I know, one of the things that I was asked about is like a quote that I live by and things like that. And one of the greatest things that I've heard and I've taken and I've used it since I've heard it is when I was back in St. Louis, we had a preacher come and she preached a sermon. And her name was Pastor Reeves, Pastor Mary Reeves. And one of the things that she said is stuck with me for years, and it still sticks with me today. Is that she said that when God created us, He walked the journey of our life before bringing us here on earth. And He kicked out of the pathway everything that was going to kill us or destroy us. And everything else that He left there was for our good and for our making and to bring us into a better person. And so I have to remind myself of that. If it was going to kill me, if it was going to destroy me, God would have removed it from the path. He's already removed it from the pathway. So everything that I go through, every trial, every obstacle, everything that I face, it's for my good. It's to make me into being a better person. And I'm going to come out victorious. And so I have to remind myself of that. And it's something I share that even I tell that even to my students, as I'm talking to them, like, if it was going to destroy you, if it was going to kill you, God would have not, left it there on your pathway. So,
Man, Cassandra, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm about to launch my Facebook group. And,
mhm.
on that group, I'm going to encourage people to share their story of how they stepped up. Because I tell you, this story that you shared with me and other stories that people are going to share on the group, it gives you that boost to continue. It gives you that push to not give up on yourself. Because like you said, God has paved the way for us already, right? That means that every form of thing, anything or obstacle that would destroy us, He has taken it away. And just to sum it up, I always tell people I don't believe in mistakes. There is no mistake. Everything is a learning opportunity or a learning experience, right? If it wasn't like, why would we call it a mistake if we're constantly learning from it? You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so now, as I'm finding my own purpose in life of bringing people to my platform to share their story and to also talk about issues that we struggle with, it's making me understand that, there is no, we just learn. We meet people, we network with people, we get to know them on a more personal level. Now I know your story, and all the listeners that came on know a little bit about you. And then we get to appreciate other people's struggles. All struggle is not the same, right? The way you struggle and the way I struggle, different, right? But the good thing is, I appreciate your struggle, right? And I appreciate where you are right now in life. And I know that you have great things out there. So I have no doubt. But with that being said, my dear friend, I want to thank you so much for coming on this platform and being open, very open to, sharing with our listeners and our viewers. I also want to thank my sister Keeper for this whole production that, this fancy production that she puts together every single day. You're truly your sister Keeper or your sister's keeper. And I appreciate you for everything that you do. Until next time, guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for hanging with me and hanging with Cassandra. She told us everything about herself. I'm going to be putting on my page her book, and I'm going to be putting links to where you can find her book. And it's going to be up at least before 7 p.m. Central Standard Time today. So, guys, I want to thank each and every one of you. And again, have a chill Saturday and stay blessed. Bye.